Alright, welcome back. It's Peter or Mask of Momentum here, and today I am joined with Eric, a two-time top 8 calling competitor and one of my locals from SNEEP Media, his YouTube channel. How are you doing today, Eric?
I'm doing good, man. I'm chilling.
Last meta we did a tier list video on your channel, so I wanted to return the favor and do one on my channel today.
Definitely.
So this one we're specifically going to talk about more of like the calling Dallas and the ProQuest season. So we're still like pre-rotation for Worlds meta because as you know, a lot of people know, Lexi and Icelander are right on the brink of getting rotated out of this format. So we'll see what happens right before Worlds, but this is going to be our calling Dallas / leading into ProQuest season tier list today. So, dude,
I didn't even recognize until last night that that's like basically 2 weeks out.
Yeah, I think here, look at my yeah, October 20th to the 22nd is calling Dallas, and then we have like 2 more weeks of ProQuest, like 2 weeks of ProQuest season, like 1 week off, and then it's Worlds week. So we're really getting down to it. Like this month is going to be, yeah, it's like we have like a month and a half, I want to say, and it's like it's the end of the season, so it's pretty good. But let's get right into it. We'll start with just like at the top here. We got Arachne. I forgot his name for a second, but we got Arachne. Traditionally, Arachne has been pretty underexplored, underplayed, considered just a worse Azuri. But he did get a new tool with the new 2-for-6 that can banish equipment, which is pretty interesting as well. How are you feeling about Arachne going to this one?
Well, he also got, they got Shriek Razor, which I actually think is definitely an Arachne card. I wonder if you can build an all-out, I have built it, and I just kind of wonder how, because we're still looking at Lexi in this meta, so I'm wondering how it can fare against Lexi. If you did like an all-out equipment, where you could buy it back every turn. But honestly, I don't think that's feasible with Lexi. I think we're probably gonna have to still put Arachne, I guess, in the CE tier. I'd probably put him lower, but you know, there's no lower.
This is our abyss. Yeah. But yeah, I also agree. It's just more of like one of those characters where like it just feels like we got him, it was really super cool, he was missing a couple things, and then we're like, oh, the next set will give him something, and then they printed a strictly better hero, and then you're just like, oh, what do you do? But
I do think when Lexi goes that Arachne has some like play. I think Arachne can fatigue a lot of like boosting Mechanologist heroes.
Yeah. I just think like the Dromai matchup is just like
that's so true.
Yeah,
it's so like, true.
Yeah. But next one we got is Azalea. I'm actually pretty high on Azalea. I know that in the national season she had a couple of top 8s. She made a couple deep runs in that area, and I did think it was a sleeper pick in that meta specifically. And we're basically in the same meta, just adding 3 Mechanologists basically without Briar. And so I do think Azalea again is another sleeper pick. She didn't really get anything, but she didn't really lose anything here. And I think the Mechanologist matchups are kind of even for her, or like maybe slightly favored. So what do you feel about Azalea as well?
I think it comes back to that Arachne thing. Dromai's still here, and I don't think Dromai is going to take too big of a hit, if any, from the Mechanologist heroes. I guess we'll talk about it when we get to Dromai. So if she's still going to be present in the meta, then I can't really see Azalea anywhere past B, I guess.
I think like for like B tiers, like a lot of like the sleeper picks, and I do think Azalea is there. I think like she can make a deep run in tournaments, and you can win ProQuest with her. But I think it's like you're putting yourself at like you're hoping for a lot, in this tier. So
you gotta avoid the Dromais, gotta avoid the Icelanders. But if you can avoid those two, yeah.
then we're looking at Bolton here. Well, but no, I do think
fine with me.
Bolton did get that new helmet, but I still think the same things that have plagued Bolton will always plague Bolton until something drastically happens with the deck. So I do think he's here. I do think he's better than Arachne at least. But yeah, I think like this character either needs some like brand new mechanic that isn't with charging your soul, or just needs to be a better.
I think they should lean heavily more on the combo. I don't know if they like that combo, but I feel like that combo is the way Bolton was competitive.
Yeah. The last time we did see a lot of like Bolton be competitive, it was there. He did win in nationals, beating up Dromai, which I still don't understand how that happened. But I mean, I watched the YouTube video and I was like, damn, he did win, so like I gotta give him that. But no, I think consistently, besides like very very specific people on Bolton, I wouldn't see this deck being anywhere close. Bravo. My infamous I hate this hero with a burning passion. Something that was really funny was like Wesley tweeted, or at Fiendel on Twitter tweeted that about like a lower level, like power level, like format, like kind of like a UU tier if you ever play like Pokemon competitively, just like a lower thing. And I just said, he's like, oh, what heroes would you think would be good? And I was just like, oh, Bravo probably. And then he's like, oh no, like think like decks that we don't see play that are bad. And I was like, yeah, Bravo. So personally I would put him on like a B tier, like towards the end of it. But what are your opinion on Bravo?
This is our first disagreement. This is good. I definitely think he's better than Azalea. I think he's solid A, to be honest. I don't think he has to fear any of the mechs. I think he can handle them all pretty well. He's been doing a good job at that before. Dromai doesn't really have to fear, and I think he's one of the few heroes that has a chance against Lexi. It's still very much Lexi favored, but if he gets the right cards in the right sequence, he can get there. So I think I at least give him above Azalea, but I like him in A tier.
Yeah, we'll see what else we put up here and see if we move him down one.
Sure.
Yeah. Looking at Dory, traditionally, we did see a lot of like fatigue-ish kind of Dories pop up at US National specifically.
Yeah, the axe.
And like with the axe and a whole bunch of things. And I saw a lot of deep runs with that deck, but obviously we didn't see any top 8. I don't know if we saw any in 16 either, but like I did see a decent amount of them. But like once they were more figured out, I think once people realized that there were like more of a fatigue strategy or like oriented for that, I think people just started boarding for it, and like the deck kind of crumbled. So I personally also would put it in C, just because like you don't really see a lot of results, and I think it's right there. It's Warrior.
I think that's pretty fair. Yeah, a top of C seems good for Dory. I don't think her new card is going to push her any higher, to be honest.
And then we're looking at, obviously, I think Dromai. I think we all know how powerful Dromai is. I think it's one of those decks that, I used to always think Illusionist was Cope, but the more and more we see different builds of Dromai, I do think it is you just see the continuous success of a lot of players, and it's not even just like the single players like anymore. It's like a lot of like the mass majority of players. I know the experience brought like a more of like Big Dragon Dromai to US Nationals, and they saw a lot of success. Cruciale getting 9th, I believe, at US Nationals and was almost in top 8. I know Fino Black top 8'd, and the tons of top 8s from Dromai recently. I just do think it's probably the second best deck in the format, and deserves this S spot.
I don't know. I guess I think I've always kind of been a Dromai hater, to be honest.
Like, trust me, I am also a Dromai hater, but like every time I see the infinite amount of top 8s it gets, I just have to give it at least a little bit more respect.
I mean that's fair. I would probably have had it at like the top of A tier, okay. But like S tier is fine too.
I do think
I still just think Lexi's just better than her.
Yeah, I think it is in the conversation of like 2 to 3 on this. So I think
Does she have to worry about any of the new mechs? I don't think so, but I don't know.
traditionally I've always thought that like Dromai was good into mech specifically. So I don't know, but I do think a lot of the mech stuff is more
It seems more like Phi, where it's like it's just going to be like drone up their hand.
Yeah, I do think they can, like, Dromai can fatigue them a lot of the time because of like the base permanent.
That's
where
fair.
Phi will always always beats fatigue decks, so it's like.
That's a good point.
Yeah, I do think you have like a fine mechanologist matchup. I think all of them you have like a fine matchup against, so I do think she'll probably stay here throughout the season.
Okay.
Then we're looking at the OG mech, which is Dash today. So something that we'll kind of like move like Nitro in here, because I think one of the conversations going into this was, I know the old boost mech decks were like pretty popular at the end of the season. You saw like I know, was it Australian or New Zealand Nationals was won by like Sam. I always forget if he's Australian or New Zealand, but he was won by Sam on Dash, beating the Kano in the final. And I think you see all these mechanologist players that are known for playing mechanologists, like usually play the more like fatigue kind of like boost pounder version of OG Dash. And I think especially with like the new cards, like my favorite is like the 2-for-5 the double boost, so you can play. Yeah, that card is just so good. Like, it's just a good facilitator, right? I think Boost Dash is more consistent in a better version of Max Nitro, specifically, in my opinion. And I still think this will be probably one of the best mechanologists moving forward. At least in this specific meta, I do think it is the best mech out of all of them.
I think aggro always tends to be the first deck out the gate with when like a new set is introduced, and I think Dash aggro will be the first one out the gate to see immediate success. So I definitely agree with you there. I'm totally fine with putting it A tier. It's a little preemptive because we just don't have any results, but I think from how much she's gained. I mean, I was thinking about it. And this is some spice, but I'm going to go and spit it. You don't even necessarily have to do Tekla Pounder as you're starting. No. It could be Overload script. It could be Penetration script. It could be... She has a lot more items in her arsenal to work with.
Yeah, I think especially being with the one that can start with any of the items, like you're getting like so many items from the new set. You can build this Dash specifically. You can build in so many ways. It's just the most versatile out of like even like the new mechs, that like no matter what, like this Dash can adapt, versus the other ones are very, very specific to what they can do. Which leads us into their next one, which is going to be Max Nitro, which is just the boost only, basically OG Dash. I do think it has a worse weapon because you have to play Banksy, or like I don't know if there's like any other versions, but from the stuff
you
that
play Hanabi Blaster if you wanted to go that route.
I think Hanabi's pretty good too, but the more and more I watch like Nitro, I just realize that like you're just losing a lot of like you're playing like a very interesting game of like getting extra resources when boosting at the beginning with all of his hyperdrivers, and like sometimes you can play like the mechanoid type of thing, but I just think you're still like playing just catch up to like OG boost Dash, because I do think you just lose the race a lot of the time into there trying to be more fancy with it than just streamline.
Yeah, I think if you play it the same way as like Wombat Dash, where you're just boosting all the time, I do think Dash is definitely the best hero for that. But I do think that he has a play style that is available to him. You mentioned the Nitro Mechanoid play style. That's one. I don't know how much that will see success. I'm kind of curious. But I also wonder if you run Banksy because it has an on hit, and you run a more item-based Dash, or not Dash, but Max. And so you're not looking to boost 2 or 3 times a turn, but maybe like boost or like crank an item, boost, and then swing with wrench. And I wonder if that can have any sort of waves. But yeah, I think B tier seems good. I'd almost put him below Azalea just because I trust Azalea a little more because I know Azalea. But if someone breaks it, like, we get some sort of, Michael Hamilton, Icelander sort of deal with Max, that wouldn't surprise me. I think he has potential.
Yeah, I think he has potential, but from how much I think, OG Dash is good, I would always just put this Dash in front of like something that she can also do, but probably better. And then we have the new Prism, which I think we all can agree goes in C tier. I just think, so something that I did hear from Brian Gottlieb was he was on some podcast talking about how he felt that they didn't do the breadcrumbs of Prism correctly, and that like there is a build for Prism, but we haven't played it or built it. And I will say, until we figure that out, it will always be in this tier. I just think there's so many things with this deck that needs to be solved, and so many things that like we need more. I just don't think it's her time specifically, and it's more of those like we need somebody to show us the light before that character could be good. So
all right, I'm gonna say it because I'm not on my channel. I think that's baloney, man. I think he's just saying that to keep Prism's mains hopeful. I don't see it. I think it for sure would have been noticed by now or solved by now.
Yeah, I wonder what they were I wonder what he means by like testing it as well. I did play in the day 2 of calling Las Vegas. I did play one like my first round, and I mean, I wasn't impressed by it, but like, I mean, he still did have to make day 2, which is still like 8 rounds of slugging it out. And so I don't know what the matchup spread looked like for him, but I mean, there was one in day 2, which was, one of those things where I have to give it respect, but it is what it is.
Yeah.
And then we're going to move on to obviously front runner in the format, Icelander. Icelander is actually in a very particular place right now. It is like on a borderline of LLing, but is moving into what I would consider more of a like hostile environment for it, because traditionally Wizards have always been pretty bad into Mechanologist. Either like it's just been a rough matchup, maybe not like a a 40-60, but just one of those matchups where you're like, I'm gonna have to play like really really well and hope for the best, so I still will give Icelander respect. I still think it is an S tier. I still think it is one of the best decks of the format. I still think versus pretty much like, I think its Dromai matchup is a lot better than what people think. I still think like obviously you're not that good into Lexi, but like it is more of a winnable matchup these days. Like you have good Guardian matchups, you have good all the random matchups you're really good into. So I still got to give it respect there, and I would probably give it like a 65% chance at LLs in this format. But what are your opinions on the Icelander going forward?
I think the chance of it LNL is a little bit higher. I think someone's going to get it. But as far as where it's at on the tier list, I still think it's S tier. I still think it's very good. I'm wondering kind of if Contested Minefield like works against Lexi or not. I'm going to test that a little bit out, try it out. But yeah, as far as the Mechanologist heroes go, if they are not using Induction Chamber with the pistol, I feel pretty fine as Icelander. If they're going to be just straight boost aggro, then it's kind of like the old 5 days where, you just got to give them a bit of disruption and focus on disruption more than like attacking them. And I feel like you should be able to outlast that, but I don't know. Every new hero brings a new challenge, so we'll see.
True. We'll see. I definitely think I have faith in Icelander and people that pilot Icelander more than pretty much anything. So
that's fair. That is true.
That is fair. Then we're looking at Phi. Phi is pretty interesting. So like specifically because we're talking about the calling and the ProQuest season leading out, I'm gonna put Phi like a little bit lower than I expect him to be post this format. Specifically what I believe after, but that's another video. But I'd probably put him in like a top of B currently. I do feel like Phi is like pretty underrated currently. I think you have like a pretty good matchup into Dromai, obviously. I think you're like fine against Icelander. It's not like the best anymore, but you are fine in losing Blittle. And you just have a lot of like even matchups to decently good matchups across the field. You can definitely win a lot of aggro mirrors, but you are a character that does not block really, and just kind of presents like 15, 16 damage a turn and just says like, hey, can you beat this? I'll have one pop off like 26 damage turn, and then like, is that good enough, you know? So I still think he's one of those like kind of like gatekeep champions, heroes that can be good in a lot of formats, but I don't know how good he is when there's just better aggro decks currently.
Yeah, I don't think he's the best aggro deck. I do wonder because Charles Dunn, who won with that like fatigue sort of Briar, he said that Fi was his other consideration, and I don't think it was. You know, if you know Charles Dunn playstyle, I don't think he was going to go hyper aggro with this Fi. I think he was definitely going to go more kind of like the old Ninja Turtle. So I wonder if there is something to be seen there, and I wonder if that could be like a rare deck that can come out, just kind of like how Briar did. But yeah, until we like see that, I think B is totally a good spot, especially at the top of B. Mm-hmm. I think that's perfect.
Yeah, I could definitely see him winning a couple pro quests here, making a deep run at the calling, but I wouldn't be. If I saw a large amount of Fi at like top tables at the calling, or like him winning like an absurd amount of pro quests, I'd be very surprised. But if I saw him win like 2 on like a week, or like top 8 a couple, I'd be like, okay, it makes sense. So,
right.
And then we're looking at Kano, infinitely my favorite champion, my favorite hero I've played in a very long time, and I've put a ton of hours on it. I think this meta gets a little bit worse because specifically Mechanologist hasn't been the best matchups for Kano ever, and with Dash getting a little bit more of a help, and you aren't too good into probably like a boost variant of Max Nitro, although I do think this matchup is definitely easier than the OG Dash matchup. Right. But I do still think a lot of the good things are working for Kano. I still think like if you're playing very specifically into Icelander, you can win a lot of the games or beat a lot of the Icelanders. I still think you're playing like a coin flip matchup versus Lexi that you can win a lot of the time. You're good into like a lot of the other random decks. Which always gives you a lot of quality. I'd actually rather be on the Kano side than the Redline Dromai side currently of that matchup, which is like a very interesting matchup, but obviously like they're playing big dragons, you're just losing. But it's one of those things. But I do think he's really good into a lot of the random stuff. So, but I want to know how much the mechs are going to impact him. I do think he's worse against the Boost Dash, the Nitro, but I do think he's better versus the other two Mechanologists with like, I'd probably say almost an unlosable matchup versus Tech Levasin. I would put him probably at the end of A tier, like when we start filling this up, like the end of it. Because of multiple nationals top 8s in national wins, I do think people are gonna put more respect to him. I do think he's like kind of in like a waiting room of like, when people stop running any AB because Icelander's not in the format, I think Kano is just like right there.
Oh, that happens.
and like it'd be really interesting again to like, PT1, nobody plays AB, Kano coming back in like the first Pro Tour of next year or Worlds. But I do think he is a good like solid choice for like people that only play Kano. I wouldn't be surprised if I saw like 1 or 2 like in like a deep table or whatever, but I do think he loses a little bit of equity, so he's a little bit lower in my mind, but I think the end of A is pretty good for him.
I definitely see your argument. I think a well-piloted Kano has a good chance. I think what it comes down to for me is we have Dromai at S tier, and I don't think Dromai mains are going to go anywhere else at this point. There's nothing like her, so they're going to keep on Dromai. And if Dash is the new aggro deck, I could see some players shifting over because maybe Lexi fatigue or something, and then we're looking at 2 hard decks. So I think it really depends on how big Dash or Max Nitro impacts this new meta. If it's huge, which it has potential because it's an aggro deck, so those tend to get the numbers. then I would probably put him down one more tier. But if it's kind of if you're like you're saying, like if it's something like the last meta where it's just mostly Lexi numbers, then yeah, A tier at the bottom. A tier seems like a good spot.
Agreed. Katsu specifically, I do believe that Katsu is the better ninja currently. Out of the two, I think a lot of people will probably talk about like the new like wax on wax off combo with him. I think it's bait, but like I do think like Katsu had a decent amount of success in the national season as well leading up to this, and usually when you're playing against new aggro decks and you're playing against new decks that are trying to be mid-rangey and stuff, the decks that are really good against it or have a good chance of playing against it is a lot of these aggro decks that are also kind of playing a mid-range style but have dominative like on-hit effects that's to disrupt what your game plan because you have to block, or then to do such like a quantity of damage I don't know if you can come back. So I'm not super high on Katsu. I do think he is one of those mid-range decks that can surprise us in this coming format, so I would put Katsu right here. A little bit better than like, you know, an average like the average Kano and stuff like that, and better than these tier picks, but I wouldn't put him any higher than right here.
Yeah, I mean, I definitely wouldn't put him any higher right there either. I do think he is the better ninja of the aggro route. I just want to put this out there. If you plan to play wax on, wax off, and you're playing that more defensive style, just play Fi. You get Flame Scale Furnace. Don't play Katsu. You're not going to be doing the combo ability anyways. But as far as like just like aggro Katsu, he does have a pretty Bonds of Ancestry. It's pretty broken.
Yeah, Bonds is.
I would trust Kano over Katsu currently. Yeah, because I think even if Dash is big in the meta, like I just think I'd feel more comfortable going in with Kano because I think Dash is just Dash and Lexi are the better aggro decks than Katsu.
Yeah, I always give like Katsu the benefit of doubt in a lot of metas from having so many on hits, and the new combo lines are really good, and he's kind of like been underexplored recently, but I still think he puts up decent results to allow him to be in this tier, but definitely think in the lower end of this tier. Now we have looking at Livia. So something that I'll say about Livia is I do have a lot of hope for this deck, and I did think it was a decent amount better than what we thought, than I thought like leading up into like national season, but as results have shown, this deck has not performed like basically at all besides very like specific cases, but I do think it is, you know, better than like unplayable tier. So I would put it kind of like the bottom of this B tier here, to where if I saw one win a pro quest I wouldn't be like super surprised, but I think it's a rare occurrence.
I think I'd be very surprised. Yeah, the last time we did this, I said Livia was like the old Azalea. It was like good in the beginning, it's just faded off ever since then, and it's still holding true in my head. I think I don't know. At this point, I would trust the Prism more, only because
really,
if someone figures out Prism, then and they win one, okay, that makes sense. But if someone just plays the Levia and like wins it, then I'm like, how the hell? It just wouldn't make sense to me.
I think I feel like the Levia decks are more like people know what like they're doing playing Levia now. If you're going to play Levia, like the decks are pretty like consistent of like what they play. I just think it's more of a how powerful really is that brute aspect, right? It's not too powerful, but I mean I trust Levia more than these characters, but that's what it is.
Fair. We could agree to disagree.
Lexi, I mean, everybody knows this is the best deck in the format. It's not even close. I don't think it loses like any equity versus the new characters. Like, I think playing Lexi, you also have like you could play more of a like you can play 3 red Arctics, and you can play Winter's Bites, and you can play more of these ice cards if you really care about like people playing like dedicated aggro boost decks into you, and just shut them down and just play a better mid-range game, play a better disruption game. It's just like there's nothing this deck can't do. It's like the most consistent, like, it's like super, like just the most consistent, like best deck we've like probably had, of just like it does its thing every single time. And like if it has a 3-of-a-kind Rain Razor's turn, like you're just probably winning multiple, like once you're on the front foot, you just you don't whiff. Like it's very hard to whiff with Lexi, and like people are like, oh, well, you could run, like you'd hit like double Codex Rain Razors, like random blue, but like even in that hand, it's like it's not even that bad. Like you can do a lot of things. You're always constantly having Ponder tokens to recycle arsenals. It's just, yeah, this deck is just like it's very good. I know a lot of people were talking about LO format, and I will say that I don't think Lexi is close to any of these other decks in LO.
Oh, that was gonna be my take. I totally agree, but she's definitely in the bottom of LO format.
Like it's kind of crazy because like I do think Iyslander and Lexi are like really, really good in this format, and I know a lot of people like complain about them or like think they're kind of ready for those characters to go. But I won't lie, when we think about LO format, I don't think these decks are good. Like,
no. You get hypothermia, you get Amulet of Ice. I think Iyslander can hold her own.
Oh, well, versus like
no, you die prison every time, but those other heroes, you know.
Yeah, I can see. Like, I still think you probably have a bad Starvo matchup. Like,
that one might be a little rough.
Well, but also I think this character is a very big sleeper pick that I don't see a lot of people talking about in LO.
Oh yeah, with the stubbies.
With the stubbies, but yeah, I mean, this is just the best deck in this format, and I don't think anybody will disagree. Riptide, I mean, I don't even think we need to talk about this character, bro. Like,
you know what? Give him a little bit more love than Bolton.
Oh, Bolton?
Yeah, dude. Sorry, Bolton stands. I was once one of you guys.
Dude, he got Bolton like bullseye bracers banned from him, and like other stuff. Like, dude, I just Yeah,
okay, but here's why I would give him a little bit of push, because let's say Mechanologists come and make a huge wave, and traditionally, LSS has done a pretty good job when it's a new draftable set. One of those heroes tends to impact the meta. Mm-hmm. And Riptide has a very good chance to fatigue like a boost Mechanologist deck.
I could see that.
Go that way. Okay. Yeah, so that's why I'll give him a slight bump.
Okay, I could see that. Reiner. I think Reiner is right here as well. I do think Levia is a little bit better than Reiner, but I don't know. Like the brutes for me have been just like consistently. I think like they can have some equity in certain like metas. I do think like Reiner is like good into Iyslander. It has like a fine matchup into Dromai. Like it's probably good, but like man, your Lexi matchup is atrocious. You're like all these other matchups are just like, oh, man, it's just so rough. Like if you're not hitting specifically these two things, you're just like, you're such a dog versus every other character in the game.
Reiner gets good, which sadly to say, because I also like Reiner, this won't ever happen, but Reiner gets good when the meta isn't dominated by an aggro deck.
Yeah.
But it almost always has an aggro deck. And so it's almost always like Reiner's like, maybe at B tier sometimes, but it just depends on what the aggro deck is, will determine where he lies. And it's never in like the A tier, unfortunately.
Yeah, unfortunately we didn't see a lot of it Reiner in PT3 because like people started figuring out like Lexi was really good. But I did think like PT3 Reiner with like Dromai Oldham was probably the best meta that we've seen for Reiner in a long time. But
Lexi didn't come in. Fine.
I think he was right there, but unfortunately fall short like Brute mostly. Then we go to looking at Azuri. I think Azuri is like a solid B tier character. I think like obviously you can fatigue like Lexi. Like Lexi does not want to see Azuri, but I think like consistently being bad against Iyslander, being bad against Dromai, being bad against Bravo specifically, being bad against Kano, and like you could probably fatigue these boost decks, but like even then like you can get overrun a lot of the time because you aren't disrupting them. You aren't like you are like disrupting them a little bit, but you aren't like putting like immediate pressure into them, right? So it's gonna take a while. I do think it's better than a lot of these other heroes, but I wouldn't put it super high.
I think she's better than Katsu, but I don't really want to put her in A tier. I kind of like her in the B tier. Yeah, I think you got her in a pretty good spot.
I think she's in one of those like low A, high B tiers. Like definitely better than like characters this way, but you really have to like sell me to have it better than any of these characters.
What's sad is that one of her best matchups is gonna LL.
That's true. Yeah, like if Lexi LLs and say Icelander doesn't LL, she still has the Icelander bad matchup. But if they both
and
LL,
the Dromai.
like if these both LL and like Dromai stays, Dromai is like just randomly like the best deck in the format. Like
Dromai is not staying.
Like
if they both LL, like Fi and Dash are coming, like all boost Dash and Fi are coming.
I think Dromai can beat the boost Dash variants. But like, I don't think you're ever like. This is just an unwinnable matchup a lot of the time.
Lexi's gatekeeping all those other aggro decks.
Yeah. We'll have to see. Like that's something that I would like to see, and then like moving forward.
Yeah.
We're looking at some bad Rune Blades here.
Rough. I mean, definitely agree with our boy Biz. Rough.
Dude, this is like I've never seen a community being like Viscerai Copium B tier for like the longest time, and like it's like right there, you know, like, and then like Rosetta of Thorn gets banned, and I have not seen one person think that Viscerai is like even remotely playable. I think like people were like, oh, the new rune chant thing, and I was like, bro, this card is ass, bro. Like I don't know what we're looking at. Like it's just, this is like the roughest. Like I mean, they banned Skeletor, bro. Like, and I've never thought, like, besides like PT2, like I was like the last time people thought Viscerai was good, and like even
it won the calling after at Pro Tour. Oh yeah, that's what you're talking about. Yeah, I see what you're saying. Yeah,
it's just like, I don't know. It's just I feel so bad for this character. Nerfed. Yeah, I mean, I wonder if they would ever unban Skeletor and
doesn't
just
seem like it.
I don't think they would, but like if they unban Skeletor, I think there's a deck for him. But like they're just, man, it would take a lot for me to not think Viscerai is like very unplayable.
They are trying, really pushing the OTK without Skeletor. And it is fun, but it will win an armory, and I think that's about it.
Yeah. And then Vincent, I just like, dude, I think everybody agrees this character is
not good.
Just not good. It's just like, there's just nothing else to say about it. It's just like, I hoped this character was going to be the next Chain, and I would enjoy Shadow Runeblade and playing like this again. And it's just like, every time I was like, okay, this character could be good, and then I would play like 10 more games, and I was like, dude, why am I even like testing this? Like, I dropped it pretty fast after it came out, and I was just like, never looked back. So
I'm gonna make a PSA announcement to all the Talishar players out there. We don't know how long, if Talishar is on the chopping block or not. We don't know. So let's not waste any more games on Vincent, please. All right, we tried it. It just doesn't work. Let's move on.
Oh man, yeah, it's pretty interesting. All right, now for some spicy new picks into this. I do think so. I did have I had a Twitter post that got a decent amount of traction talking about Teklo, specifically of how I believe in the new set between Nitro, Teklo, and the new Dash. I would believe that Teklo would LL the fastest out of those three.
Whoa.
And I do stand by that after playing 40 some hours of Teklo the last, like since we've got the previews. And I would like to put him like here. And I think this is going to be like pretty weird. I will note that Lexi is like, you're like 45 at best into Lexi.
Gotcha.
And like, I don't think he's like, I think you can win the matchup. I don't think it's good, but you can win, which is like not a bad place to be against Lexi. Is like, you can win sometimes, like, and Icelander, I'm gonna be honest with you. If you play against Icelander, I honestly do believe that going to get lunch is better. And then like trying to play the game. I think like anything that Tekla is trying to do, Iyslander is just a better deck. I think like because you have to give up Evo slots to like put AB, you're just like infinitely a dog. Like it's just I don't know. I wouldn't do that. I do think you're decently even into Dromai. I think it's like randomly a decent matchup, and something that I will be looking forward to seeing what LLs like this season, and looking forward to testing Teklo versus a lot of Dromai and a lot of other builds in going into Worlds. But currently I do think it's a very interesting matchup that Teklo, I don't know if he's favored, but I do think it is at least an even matchup that has a lot of skill expression from like what I've tested with at the beginning. I do think that his strategy of being a super efficient, like just numbers deck, like when you're playing, like there's multiple strategies for him. Like you could play a dedicated like Evo Singularity deck, which I believe has very polarizing matchups. But having polarizing matchups, but those polarizing matchups being the good side, being top decks, is very good. I would say that like if you're playing a dedicated, like you're only playing Singularity, 0 boost in your entire deck, you're just trying to block out fatigue people, I think like that version can beat a lot of these aggro decks, like the Mechanologist builds, like Bravo and all of that stuff. But you are going to lose a lot of equity versus like a Katsu or like a Lexi or an Iyslander and a Dromai. But I think the better build currently that I've been testing is more playing a somewhat of a boost oriented, but more of you're playing like a 2 cost, like you're swinging you have 4 evos, you swing your weapon and then play a 2 cost, and you're basically doing like a 2 card 9, and then you can block
something like similar to like limited in.
Yeah, 2 card 9 plus like a 6 to like a 7 block, depending if you draw like a firewall or like if you're playing defensive reactions as well. And then you can also play Singularity in the deck, and it's like if you're playing boost cards, so like you can boost the evos and then play them on a good turn or like stuff like that. But like if you banish Singularity, obviously it feels bad and you don't have that late game. But sometimes I don't feel like you do need that late game versus a lot of decks in this format, and those overpower like War Machine and like I don't know what the other one's called, but the one like there's one that discards a card and the one that kills the arsenal that are like 9 overpower are just so good when you have 4 evos, and like you just win like it's like a 2 card 9 with an on hit, so it's like 12 like value. Like it's actually insane, and I'm like pretty hyped about it. And I do think people need to find the build, because like I found some builds that I think are really, really good, and like the more people that find it, I will think that we'll see a decent amount of success with him. I mean, I plan to bring him for at least 1 pro quest this season, like just to play him and like even with like these characters. But this is like my deck that I believe in the next like Worlds format could be a very big sleeper. Okay.
To me, he and I haven't done too much playing as him. I was kind of waiting for Talishar to have everything ready for me. But I have played against him, and he feels very similar to Bravo, where he has those big attacks like you're talking about, like the Terminator tanks and the War Machines and Pulse Wave protocols, which are like awesome on hits abilities. But I mean, yeah, that's kind of why it reminds me of Bravo, because it's also just like Bravo has those big attacks as well. Mm-hmm. So I don't know, like I'm very interested to see. I'm fine with him being, man, I don't know. I guess he's really an unknown for me. If you saying the Dromai matchup feels like winnable and like feels pretty good, then I'm fine with him being there.
Yeah, there's a lot of things you can do in a sideboard to like buy you time versus Dromai, right? Like I think
is this big dragon Dromai we're talking about, or
I think we're talking about Redline, right? But like Redline, you can trade a lot more. Like you don't have to think about it. But like even versus like big dragon, like you have like Mechanologist always has a random amount of poppers in their deck that are just like higher than the regular like random decks out there, right? And I think Teklo also like innately wants to play a lot of these 6 power like 2 costs, or like these war machines and like these late game powerhouses that also just have 6 power. Like so like you naturally are just playing like 15 18 poppers and could go to like 21 post sideboard if you really wanted to, and then you can like kind of trim down on some evos and play more of a mid-range game. And then if you're ever casting Singularity versus Dromai, like the innate value you have of going like here's 9 overpower, go again, swing 6, you discard a card and like you can block 2 or take like if they can only block like max 9 because you're making them discard a card and you're presenting 15 a turn, like you're just winning like every turn going forward. So I think there's a lot of situations where Teklo can beat Dromai, but I do think this is like, I think this matchup has a lot of skill expression and I can't wait to explore it more. But yeah,
no, he's definitely exciting. I would love to see him. Like he's plays a little bit more my traditional play style. So I'm interested in him. Yeah, if I kind of forgot that he just kind of naturally runs poppers, so that Dromai might not just be a problem. Especially post Lexi, I would be totally fine having him at A. Like I would even like bat my eye.
Yeah, my thing is like if both of these LL, I'm super excited. If just Lexi LLs, I'm less excited, but I still think he is a decent pick. But I mean, sometimes if you have like sometimes with like you're playing a deck with an auto loss that's like one of the best characters in the game, but like I mean when you play like pro quests, like how many Icelanders are really in your local scene like around you is really going to determine if you want to play this. Like if you have like 1 Icelander, maybe 2, and like in a 32-man field, like I mean if you're only wanting to dodge like 1 or 2 people like for the entire day, like it's not,
you still got those Lexi.
like well I think like this it is somewhat winnable, right? Like I think you can, like I mean if you're in a top 8 situation you need your 1 time, like I think you can get it.
Okay.
Like I don't think it's totally unwinnable, but like you do have to play like almost perfectly to try to like have that chance. But I do think this character will excite a lot of people, and like this is like my deck that I'm gonna put my chips in, and I hope somebody also figures it out, or randomly like I have my invite and I'm like, well, I'm gonna show up to a pro quest and just play Teklo and like give him some reps before Worlds, and then like we can see this deck list that I've been working on. But I do think this deck has a lot of promise to it.
I want to mention one thing before we move on. That deck, so Teklo Vossen, is one of the big reasons. I mean, I don't know. We'll see how many people start playing it, but it's very good against fatigue. I don't think Tree Frog Dash can actually beat that deck, nor like Ninja Turtles, Fi, or even like Arachne. And so, I think that deck has the ability to be anti-fatigue too. So just a little, plus bonus.
It's like really weird because like usually when you boost and like you always lose a card, but if you boost an item, it's like you're like net equal, but like also like the block on the card is like usually like especially if it's the blue one, right? It blocks 3, 2, and then 1, but you don't really want to block with the 1 because it'll destroy everything. But you block 3 and 2, which is like 5 block, which is like kind of 2 cards. And then like it also has an additional ability like when you transform it into or from. So it's like you're getting like more than a card of value when you boost it. Like so like if you hit it off the boost and then you play it and you get an additional value off that 1 card, you're getting like almost like 1.5 cards per like equipment that you're boosting, even if it's like just like the 2 costs like regular Evo ones that just block like 2 than 1. But like still it's like he has a lot of value randomly in the deck that like I think I had like a 5 card hand randomly that I had like almost 32 points of value. Like I didn't attack for 32, but like just through like hitting equipment off boosting and like playing certain cards and like these additional effects that he had, like I had 32 points of value in a turn off a 5-card hand, which is just like, yo, that's insane, you know, like yeah. So like I think you get a lot of value. I do think like randomly you could lose against aggro decks because he does take time to get his value, but yeah, I'm really excited about this character. This is like, after playing him more, I was like, yo, this character is like actually could be the real deal going forward. So,
character books. All right.
So this is the one where it has like a 2% win rate on Talishar, which like I don't really read into it too much, but like this is the deck that I'm like, this is the hardest deck I think you probably build out of 3 of them, and like,
oh, for sure.
Yeah, this one's like, it's gonna take time for somebody to figure out like a build, but like I think the inherent numbers with this deck is pretty good. I mean, if you're just playing like, say you just like attack for like, you have like, you're playing like 2 boost cards and like you have no arsenal and you see an item on top, and then you like, I think the best thing is like if you have an extra blue in your hand and you just like you're like, I'll play this item from the top, there's another item on top, oh my god, there's a 3rd item on top, and you get to play 3 cards off a blue pitch off the top of your library is like, yeah.
Oh, you can only do it once per turn,
oh,
though.
Really? Oh, never mind. My whole dream was dead. But like,
that would have been sick.
Yeah, I don't know. Like sometimes you just have the extra resource floating and can play an item, or you know, some of the items have really good effects, but I have zero idea how to build this character.
I have been cooking with it, and I think it's less playing items on your opponent's turn, but more playing on your turn and cranking to get those extra action points.
Do you play it at instant speed when you put it on the top, or no?
Yeah, you do play at instant speed. Yeah, so even if you don't even want to crank and you just want to get the item out there, you still have your action point, which is really nice. I do think with you definitely use her new gun, and you are just building that gun up to have a high octane turn. And once you have that high octane turn, so you got to run some boost cards, so it's not just all items, right? There's like a little bit of balance, just like what you're talking about with Teklo. Once you have that high octane turn, you boost 2-3 times, and then you just shoot that gun as many times as like you possibly can. Yep,
I can see it. Where would you put it currently?
Yeah, easy. Top of C. It's not good still.
Really?
It needs testing. At least from what I've been doing, like I could not confidently take this into like a pro quest or calling or anything, like especially worlds or anything.
Yeah, I think for potential for this deck, I would put it almost here. For potential, I would put it here. I mean,
hell, I even put it a little higher, to be honest. I think it potentially could be broken.
Yeah, potentially it could be really good. I think the safe bet is that it's probably better than Nitro, because I'm not really high on this deck at all, because I think it's just a worse version. But like, this is just like, hey yo, like this could, like, we could be being like, this is here, like if somebody figures it out, but I could also be in like, oh, it's a solid character, or it's like, oh, it's probably in this, so.
Yeah, right now I think it has the Prism symptom, where if it has less life, it must be good. Yeah, but it just hasn't been figured out.
Yeah, we have not figured it out yet. But I think this is like pretty much where I would put a lot of tier lists going into the season 4. I think we have some spicy picks of like, I think we're pretty high on like these mechanologists right here, and like less on, obviously all of these, and like, kind of a question of these two right here. But this is going to be our tier list video. Thank you guys for tuning in, and we'll see you post ProQuest pre-Worlds, see if these LL or not, and we'll see another one. So I'll see you guys later.